Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and Johnnykin and the Goblins. If you remember, we left off where Johnnykin had just said to Chesme that she needed to start her riddle with 11 men and a woman old, because she started it with 12 men. So we're going to continue from that part. Found, found, cried Chesme, clapping her hands, leaping with joy. Now I shall be a girl all the time. Goodbye, pussycat. Goodbye, goose. And I do thank you so much. Oh, so very much, she cried to Johnnykin. I like fairy tales very much, she said, as she went on. Only they're so improbable, you know, and I don't like that at all. That seems to me very odd, replied Johnnykin. Why, you're a fairy girl yourself. Yes, and that's just the reason. You real boys and girls like to hear improbable stories about fairies, but we in Fairyland like to hear probable stories about real children. This was such a new idea to Johnnykin that he kept quiet for some time, and then he said, I should like to hear one of your stories. Certainly, replied Chesme. This is one. Once upon a time there was a real woman who had an actual son. When he woke up bodily, it was a true morning, and he bathed himself with visible soap in perceptible water, and went down and had some trustworthy tea, and some material muffins and positive butter, with a palpable bloater. Then he walked along a rational road to an unimaginative school, where he learned veritable lessons, all in prose. When he was unquestionably bad, he got sound corporal punishment with an authentic switch or a reliable rod, and cried unfeigned tears. Then he used to say, with accuracy, twice one is two, twice two is four, twice three is six, twice... Oh, come now, said Johnnykin. You don't call that a story, do you? Why, you're saying the multiplication table. It's such a story as we like to hear, replied Chesme with a sigh, because it's all so real. Then she was silent and walked on, till after a while she said, Do you notice that thing which has been walking on before us for ever so long? Johnnykin looked and saw a tall, dim form was going on before them, stopping whenever they stopped. It's a giant, said Johnnykin, but it looks like a tower. It's the Dark Tower, said Chesme. Do you know why I bring you to it? Here, in Fairyland, whenever we begin to be dull and want to enjoy something which seems quite real, we have each a book of our own, adventures, and we begin to read it. And while we read, the things we are reading about keep really happening, and we're really living in them. That's very hard to understand, said Johnnykin. Why, it seems very simple to me. Don't you have pictures in your books? You real boys and girls surely do. Certainly, replied Johnnykin. Well, can't you imagine looking at real things instead of pictures, hearing sounds, and smelling the flowers in pictures? Now our books are so well written that when you read them, you really think you are doing all this. Then I suppose, said Johnnykin, with such a look, one can have adventures whenever one pleases. Ah, I should like to have such a book as that. I knew you would, cried Chesme delightedly. And for that reason, I'll get you one. I'd do anything for you. When you go into the Dark Tower, you'll see Childe Rowland, and just ask him if he has got among his books one about yourself. Do you remember Childe Rowland, guys? I told a story about him being in fairyland. If he's got among his books one about yourself, he'll give it to you. It was so nice in you to help me with that riddle, she added. By this time it had grown lighter, and the dark tower was seen very plainly moving on before them. "Stop!" cried Chesme. "I'm only waiting for your commands," said the tower respectfully. As he spoke, he yawned frightfully, and in doing so opened his door, showing a horrible row of teeth. "This gentleman must see Childe Rowland," said Chesme. "Tell him to give him what he wants and charge it to me. Now, goodbye," she said to Johnnykin. "You'll see me again soon. Turn your ring." As she spoke, she jumped into a great stone and vanished. The dark tower yawned again. Johnnykin did not like the looks of his mouth at all. "It's awfully like being eaten alive," he said. And then the idea of going into that thing, like that, which has teeth and talks, you know. "I say," exclaimed the tower, "you don't want me to get bronchitis, do you? Keeping the wind blowing into my throat, with my mouth open." There was no help for it. Johnnykin had to go through the door, so he ran as fast as he could. It closed with a tremendous snap bang. He found himself in a beautiful, ruined cloister, brightly lit by the moon. All was as silent as it is in the moonland itself, where there are no voices to speak. At the end of the cloister was a tombstone against the wall, and on the upright stone was carved the form of a grin, but also, at the side, a grim old monk with a long beard. Johnnykin stopped to look at it. "Do you want anything?" inquired the monk. "I want Childe Rowland. I am he. I was a warrior once. I'm a monk now," said the old man. And with this he stepped out of his tombstone. "Does anyone live here with you?" asked Johnnykin. "Only Friar Bacon, the man who invented gunpowder, you know. Here he is." Saying this, another old man entered and stood by Johnnykin. "Ah," he exclaimed, "a mortal boy! Mortal boy! What are the newest inventions on earth? Tell me everything." Johnnykin tried to think and then exclaimed, "Steamboats, locomotive engines, apple parers, revolvers, paper shirt collars, Liebig's extract, yeast powder, percussion, postcards, artificial ivory, dynamite, and rinking." "Ah," exclaimed the monk. Sadly, I invented all of those things myself. Once, yes. Mortal boy, every one of them. But people don't want them then." "What do you want?" he said suddenly, as if waking up. "A book. Any book in particular, mortal boy?" asked Friar Bacon. "If you have a copy of the Adventures of Johnnykin, I should like to get it." The friar went away through a side door, soon returned with a little parchment-bound book with silver clasps. "Here it is, take it," said the old man, very good-naturedly. "Stop a minute," said Childe Rowland. "Are you a good mortal boy?" he asked Johnnykin. "Are you an honest mortal boy?" "I hope so, sir," replied Johnnykin. "Who stole the donkey?" inquired the man, with a piercing look. "I think, sir," replied Johnnykin, "that there was no donkey stolen, and secondly, the goblin did it, and thirdly, that there is no donkey, because he is a boy." Johnnykin was almost frightened to find himself talking so boldly, but the old man only smiled. "It is time for you to go now, and Friar Bacon, not through the door, you know, mortal boy," he added. That only opens to let people in. You must leave by the window. Johnnykin looked out of the windows, and it was very high, and far below it yawned a great ravine, hundreds of feet deep, with steep, rocky sides, here and there covered with old trees, while in the depths he could see a snow-white, foaming torrent rushing madly along in the clear moonlight, but so very far below that he could indeed hear no sound from it. It was beautiful, a beautiful prospect, but Johnnykin did not like the prospect of being thrown into it. Meanwhile, the two old monks had bought a long, narrow plank, which they put halfway out over the windowsill. "Now then, mortal boy," said Childe Rowland, "goodbye." "But," replied Johnnykin, "you don't expect me to walk that plank and be thrown off?" "Certainly," said Friar Bacon. "It's a new invention of mine," he added proudly. "For, seeing visitors out, you walk out to the further end of the plank, and then we two sit down suddenly on this end, and then you will be shot, oh, ever so high up." "It's quite a sensation," said Childe Rowland. "Perfectly delightful," added Friar Bacon. "It cures neuralgia," cried Childe Rowland. "We have a great many certificates of its excellency from all the nobility and all the gentry too." "And Friar Bacon, Miss Marjolaine, said de Montfort, is very fond of trying it, you know." When Johnnykin heard this, he thought he would take the risk, so he hastily ran to the end of the plank. "Goodbye, everything," he said, "if this is to kill me, but I really have got so far now." And he said this. The two old men jumped or bumped on the inside end of the plank, and Johnnykin felt himself shot like a pea from a blowpipe high in the air, but instead of falling violently, he came down like a feather into the road, and looking up saw the dark tower glittering in the moonlight, and the two old monks waving their hands in friendly farewell to him from the very window he had just jumped out of. And that's the end of this part, guys. I'm sorry if you heard any noise from my dogs. I can't help it, you know what they're like. Sometimes I think they wait till I start reading, then they start making noise. It's like they like it. Anyway, guys, we shall continue our adventures with Johnnykin when we return to find out where he ends up going. But the next part does have Goblin Land and the Finger Men, the Slave Pencil people and the Dying Brigand, Peter Pumpkin Eater, Esquire, the Rush Fairies, Chesme on a Broom, and how Johnnykin fought the knights and slew the pig. Marjolaine comes again. And that's all in one sort of episode, so we'll probably do it bit by bit. Thank you for listening, and many blessings.